Welcome to AIScento, where we explore how AI is transforming business, leadership, and the future of work. Today's conversation is about something most AI discussions completely miss. Everyone's focused on tools, automation, and efficiency, but very few are asking what happens when you apply AI to organizations that are still operating with broken human dynamics. Because here's the truth, if AI doesn't fix dysfunction, it scales it, but it can also scale clarity, performance, and purpose. And that's why today's guest comes in. He comes in, Gary Acevedo, leadership expert, facilitator, and someone who has spent decades helping people unlock performance at the human level. Gary, welcome to AI Cento.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So we are going to jump in here. We'll start with our first segment about the human operating system for AI. Let's start here. We're entering a world where AI is augmenting decision making. People are offloading a lot of their kind of thought process to AI, productivity, and even creativity. But what do you focus on is the human layer underneath all of that. What breaks first in an organization when AI is introduced? What are your thoughts around that?
Well, AI, like any good tool, can be used to either build or destroy. And any tool that people use is basically as good as their ability to ignite their own potential. And everybody has enormous human potential. But I found out that the worst you can say about most people is that as humans, we're very clever at getting in our own way. And so I love finding people who, are talented and brilliant, but they're aware of where it is that they get in their own way. And, you know, because I was blessed by the fact that my first mentor was generations ahead of his time, then I took his breakthrough process and I evolved it. And that breakthrough process is it helped Mark Hughes create Herbalife. And it helped Ron and Joseph bring 12.5 million people out of poverty. And it helped Bert save his company, which today is saving hundreds of premature babies' lives every day. And one of my students, Renee, wanted to work with people with addictions, and we helped her to unlock her potential. And so she's helped over 15,000 people with addictions. And because of her medical innovations, she just got done speaking at the UN. So we have the ability to help people not only get out of their own way, but to expand their emotional and even spiritual gifts so that they actually can make the best decisions that will help them move forward and get to higher ground.
What happens when companies try to AI their way out of deeper issues? So, kind of instead of dealing with maybe human or systems issues, kind of just throwing AI at it.
Yeah. Well, when I've worked with some, Fortune 500 companies, I discovered that you have to talk to the people at the top, but then if we go down to the floor where, you know, where the employees are, most everybody in the company who's not at the top knows what's wrong with the company. And most leaders fail to make the invisible visible. And like I remember working with a fairly large national company, and everyone in the company knew that the owner gets these exciting visions, and then the whole company has to go this direction. And then he gets another inspiration, and then the whole company has to go that direction. And they all could see it. But if the leadership keeps looking for the solution in their circumstances, and they forget that everything that's going on in the company starts with what's inside of them, their pictures, their thoughts, their feelings, how they relate to the people that are in charge of things. That's where everything is essential and vital. And so when leaders don't have the best coaches they can afford, they end up working really hard, but doing a lot of spinning their wheels. You know what I mean? Like recreating the same situations over and over and over again.
And how does your philosophy, people are perfect, fit into an AI-driven world?
Well, you have to realize that human beings tend to create a paradigm for their experience called maybe if I fix this, then I'll be okay. And when we take people through these cutting edge breakthrough processes, because the most profound experience I ever had in my career, I was working with a therapist who worked with John Lennon, and I had this revelation that everything that people criticize themselves for, whether it's anxiety or depression, or a lot of the leaders I work with wrestle with overwhelm, like juggling too many balls, you know, and sacrificing the things that matter most, like the family or their well being or their health. And I discovered that everything that people criticize themselves for is actually a hidden great gift, strength, or talent. So when I wrote the book, I put in there what is the great gift or talent behind overwhelm, behind being overweight, behind, anxiety, depression, everything. And I put the whole list there. So once people begin to realize that there's nothing wrong with me, that I'm actually perfect, most people think, well, oh yeah, like I'm perfect. You should see me on weekends. And once they begin to get it on a core level that there's nothing wrong with me, what happens is they become less defensive. They accelerate the pace at which you grow, and everything in that culture accelerates because they begin to focus on what I call the greatest key to influence, which is to recognize and speak to one's highest nobility. So when I do these exercises, like I remember once I was at AT&T and I did this exercise where people, like I would typically have somebody come up to the front and everybody would call out what they recognize as their greatest gifts, strengths, or talents. And then I'd get them in small groups, do the same exercise, and everybody's like blown away. First of all, that they can see those things in a person. They didn't realize they could see so much in somebody when they're looking through the positive. And the persons who are receiving it always blown away that people recognize their strengths, gifts, and talents, what's good about them. And it transforms the culture immensely. I remember we got done with that workshop, and the guy who hired us came to us like 45 minutes after it was over, and he said, "When's the last time you saw a corporate training where the moment it was over, people didn't bolt for the door?" He said, "It's 45 minutes after we ended and nobody's leaving. Everybody's so excited to talk to each other and share and all that stuff. So that's what happens when people start to realize maybe I'm okay. And, you know, in every environment, the worst thing that people can do is criticize. Like, first of all, people don't realize that everything we speak to each other is what psychologists call a projection. In other words, it might be true for them, but it's certainly true for the person who's speaking it. So when you criticize your children, yourself, your loved ones, you're diminishing them and you. And so I teach people how to take the critical parent in their own head and transform that critical parent into a loving, compassionate coach. Because when we criticize ourselves or when we criticize anybody, the child within each of us does one of three things. They either succumb, like give in, go along with, swallow their thoughts or feelings, acquiesce, etc. Or number two, they outright rebel. Like most people know what it's like to know what they should do, but like when that part of us gets rebellious, it's like, oh, you want to see me lose weight? Watch this. 5 donuts. Want to see me quit smoking? Watch this. A whole pack smoking. That's the second thing people do is they find themselves rebelling against the part of their consciousness that keeps saying you should, you ought to, you're supposed to, you're bad if you don't. And the third thing that happens to people when they get criticized is that they get paralyzed or stuck. And I've worked with leaders who've been stuck for years and didn't know how to get out of it. And it all has to do with how the critical parent in their head talks to the rebellious child in their head, and they don't see how to get over that. And it's mostly all subconscious. So that makes it even tougher because they don't even know what's happening.
Okay, so instead of AI fixing people, you're saying that the people layer determines whether AI succeeds or fails. Let's talk about performance for a bit. AI
Yeah.
is making individuals faster and more capable. I know I use it
Yes.
all the time for lots of tasks,
Yeah.
a lot of things done
Yeah.
very quickly, more
Yeah.
productive, but we're also seeing a lot more overwhelm than ever. Why do you think that
Yeah.
is?
Well, first of all, in Western culture, if you're somewhat brilliant and somewhat capable, odds are you're an overwhelmer. Because the gift within overwhelm is brilliant and capable. But people who tend to be in overwhelm have not yet mastered the moment of choice. Somebody says, "Would you like to do this?" And I'm like, "Okay." And so in my programs, I'll give people what's called the green light checklist. And they have an assignment that for the next 3 months, they're going to tell everyone in their life that when you ask me for anything, I'm going to say no until I can check my green light checklist. And like, it's a bunch of things like, is it true for me? Is every part of me, is this true for me? Because the truth is, you can't even have an upset until the moment you betray your own truth. Literally, every upset starts with self betrayal. So, and on that list, they go through a list of things, and the very last thing that they have to check is what am I willing to give up in order to say yes to this? And after 3 or 4 months, if they really use this green light checklist, they can absolutely transform their level of overwhelm into balance and harmony with their life because they're learning how to master the moment of choice.
Why does AI sometimes increase stress instead of reducing it, do you think?
Well, it's not the tool. It's not AI. It's the people that are using it. Every human being has their own level of what you could call a stress thermostat. Like most people know that a fat thermostat, your metabolism, some people can eat a horse and never gain a pound. Some people look at a sandwich and gain 10 pounds, right? It's because their fat thermostat is set at a certain level. Well, people also have a financial thermostat, a self esteem thermostat, and a stress thermostat. And so, because mostly due to early childhood stuff, when somebody's stress thermostat is set pretty high, then pretty much everything makes them stressful. And people don't realize that 90% of the crap that goes through their head is stuff that they should not pay any attention to. It's negative thinking. And if they could learn how to hang up the phone, you know, or as Warner would say, get off it and not focus on any negative thinking. Like it's taken me a long time to learn, but basically, I don't allow any negative thoughts in my head. The moment a negative thought comes on, I use what the Hawaiians call cancel. And I refocus on whatever makes my heart sing, whatever is positive, whatever is my highest excitement. And then we teach people how to do that with the circumstances that are truly scary and terrifying, you know, money problems, whatever. The point is, you can take any problem and then learn how to recreate it so you get the gift within the problem. And there's like a 5-step process we teach people to identify what they don't want, and then identify what they do want, and then brainstorm how are they going to get what they do want, and then make it safe, and then make a commitment because every upset ends the moment you make a commitment to your correction.
What happens when you give powerful tools to, like AI, to people who are already overwhelmed?
Well, depending on their ability to overcome the overwhelm, they can it can be an incredible, magnificent tool, save them tons of time. But depending on the person and how overwhelmed they are already, that's first of all, they'll avoid it. Second of all, they'll give it a shot, but then not really apply it because they can see it's more of what they don't want. And, the worst thing is that they ignore it instead of really applying it. And it's so cute because I notice, we have remarkable tools for people that can change someone's life. But it's fascinating how people will have an experience in one of my workshops. And then I always do my best to emphasize you have to apply this. You have to do it every day for 30 days, or it just disappears. You have to make it into an actual habit. Your brain creates a new neural pathway for that particular behavior if you do it for 21 to 30 days. And I always say 30 days because until you do it every day for 30 days, there's no neural pathway that makes it a habit. And that's what makes people change. People can change anything. You can literally change anything through conscious repetition by doing something every day for 30 days. And I've done that in my life where I've had several things I had to change. And, it works. I mean, how did you learn how to tie your shoes? Conscious repetition. How did you learn how to drive? Conscious repetition. You know, how do you learn every bad habit you have? Conscious repetition. How do you learn every good habit you have? Conscious repetition, you know.
Let's take a quick tactical turn here. For leaders who are implementing AI right now, what is the biggest mistake they're making with their teams?
Well, what I found is working with some really powerful leaders is that the biggest mistake most leaders make with anything, including AI, is that instead of being a compassionate coach, they criticize. And they don't realize that the more they criticize, the more they keep their people stuck, repeating the same mistakes over and over again. And so when I work with leaders, I often show them how to use the right tone of voice. So it says, hey, I'm with you, I'm on your side. You know, you can do this a little to the left, a little to the right. You know what I mean? Like, I can teach people how to fire somebody. And when that person walks out, they say, thank you. Because it's not in the words. It's not, it's not in the words. I can say, well, I'm sorry, and you get my meaning real clear, you know? But if you have the right tone and the come from is, I'm on your side, I'm with you, I'm rooting for you, I'm cheering you on, we all make mistakes, then they get incredible results from their people. And so, whether it's AI or anything else that they're trying to get their people to do, biggest mistake leaders make is going into criticism instead of compassionate coaching.
Let's go into AI sales and value creation a bit now. So let's bring this into revenue. Right? Everybody's interested in revenue, certainly for their
Yeah.
business, because AI is massively impacting sales, automation, AI, SDRs, personalization at scale. But you said something interesting. So the three points that I think you sent, sales is a direct experience of value. So here's a question. In a world where AI can generate content, outreach, and messaging, what actually creates value now?
Well, I've taught 200 salespeople at a time, and I asked them who knows when a sale occurs. And they took good guesses, but none of them could tell me. And I say, a sale occurs when the client has a direct experience of the value. It's not up here, it's here. And so when I teach sales, I teach them how to talk to the person in such a way that they get the person to go from their head to their heart and have a direct experience. So, to whatever degree AI can actually support that, support them. Like I remember I was working with a mortgage guy, and he back in the old days he'd send postcards out, and people would call him up and say, is this true? And he'd have like 10 minutes. And he made the mistake of thinking what most salespeople think, which is the more I talk, the more I sell, which is a huge mistake. It's actually asked backwards. And I taught him, I said, when they call up, don't talk about your thing. Say, yes, all that's true. We'll get to that in a minute. But can I ask you a personal question? Like, what does this house mean to you? And the first response is always going to be vague. It comes from their head. But if he keeps asking questions, is it like this? Is it like that? With every question you ask the brain, it goes from here more specific until it gets to the experience. And when the client has a direct experience of the value, that's the moment a sell. And the way I say it is when somebody has a direct experience, we call it a clunk because it's like a ring and a bell. And until they have a direct experience, any consideration is going to stop them. After they have a direct experience, no consideration is going to stop them. All you got to do is recreate their considerations. Let them know that if you feel they feel heard, you know what that consideration is, and you're recreating it for them, so you know you're in their world, and they will literally solve their own problem because they've already had a direct experience of the value. So I teach people a thing called the genie game, where it's like, if I was a genie, I could give you anything you want out of this. What would be the best result you could get out of this product or service or whatever? And then I have a way of teaching them how to ask the right questions so that they go deeper and deeper and deeper, and then they have a direct experience. So it really depends on how well someone can teach the AI how to do that, like how to get the client to a direct experience.
Are your clients seeing AI help or hurt their sales performance?
I don't have enough experience with that. Um, AI is fairly new, and I've been hearing a lot of good things from people. Some of my clients are using it for flyers and reels and things for social media and like that, but I don't really have enough experience talking to them about what they're doing with AI to really have a sense of that.
Okay. And what types of organizations are coming to you right now, industry size as far as, helping on this area on this side?
Well, I have two different types of clients. Basically, there's the corporate clients or people who have a small business, you know, like that. And then I have people who have a wide variety of businesses, but they're mostly there for what they can gain personally. Like they want to know how to get more success or how to manage their consciousness to basically be more effective and get out of their own way and, like that. So, and I work with both types because I had an extraordinary experience that basically ignited my intuitive abilities. And so when a like say a business type is talking to me, I remember one guy came to me and said, "Oh, it's going to be great. I'm going to buy this big thing because I've already got the client lined up." And I can hear when people are talking from either their critical parent or the rebellious child. And I said, "Do me a favor, please do not do anything for 3 days. Give me 3 days. Promise me." And he came back 3 days later and he said, "Oh my goodness, I'm so glad I listened to you because that would have been a disaster." You know, it's all about what's in their consciousness and in their feelings, not necessarily the strategy that's going to take them someplace.
And are they already using AI when they engage you?
I don't know because a lot of them, I end up working with them and sometimes they mention it.
Hmm.
I don't ask them outright because usually it's about the fourth or fifth session
Mhm.
that they will mention it and say, "Oh, I tried this new thing called AI," and, like
Mhm.
that.
Okay. And where do they struggle most? Leadership or messaging, alignment, execution?
Are you talking about with AI or besides
Just
AI?
generally that whole sales process and with the obviously incorporating AI, which is new for many of them now.
Well, number one on the list is what I said about how the worst you can say about most human beings is that they're very clever at getting in their own way. Like knowing what you need to do is not the same as doing it. So sometimes it's a little gap, sometimes it's a pretty big gap. And when they start to get really conscious of how if I would do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, you know, I could get success. But like I have a long-term program I do, and it's called the Master Keys to Assure Your Success. And it's basically three components. You have to have a conscious game plan, a very effective, smart game plan that the smartest people agree, yes, you do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, you're going to get your dream. they have to have a no exits game. And that's key because without a no exits game, they're going to resist, avoid, procrastinate, et cetera, et cetera. And then they have to have processes so that when they start to avoid, resist, or procrastinate, these processes can help them get out of the fear-based theater and into the love or play-based theater so that they don't keep letting their barriers get in their way of really working their plan. And we found out that that works. And in one of my programs, people get extremely creative. Once they get this, they get extremely creative on giving themselves a no exits game. And I have a lot of successes that come out of that system, you know,
Mm.
people who, like I remember one guy said, if I don't do my game plan, there's a thing we do in there called 30 days to peak performance. So if I don't do this and this and this within my 30 days, he did the program with his daughter and he said, I'm going to let my daughter take my brand new Lincoln Continental out overnight with no questions asked. See, not going to happen, right? And he was making $250,000 a year, and within like 9 months or something, he was making 70, 80, 90,000 a month because he had the potential, and he gave himself a no exits game to make sure he had a network marketing thing, and it exploded. And I
Okay.
have a lot of successes like that.
Hmm.
People who apply the system. Sonia just had her first $1 million year.
Hmm.
You know, I remember Wes Hanna was a lawyer.
Mhm.
And back in the day, he was making 150 an hour, which back in the day was a lot of money for lawyers. And there was this thing in Salt Lake that they would get $1,500 an hour. So all the biggest lawyer companies in Salt Lake were vying for the thing. And he's a one-man show.
Hmm.
And because he put his plan together and had a no exits game, by the end of the 30 days to peak performance, he got the contract,
Hmm.
which, is like David and Goliath.
Well, let's talk a little bit about getting out of your own way. I think we mentioned that in the beginning. One theme that keeps coming up, especially with founders and operators using AI, is that they become the bottleneck. Even with all this technology, why do people still get in their own way, even when they have AI?
Well, again, that's not really about AI. That's about each individual person's ability to get out of their own way, to not resist, not avoid, not procrastinate. And, people tend to think that their solution is in their circumstances. And that's like you get a fire in the kitchen, grease fire, and it gets pretty big. And so you grab the fire extinguisher and you run past the kitchen and start spraying like crazy in the living room. People keep trying to solve problems in a realm in which the fire doesn't even exist. It doesn't exist in the circumstances. The circumstances are just a reflection of what's going on inside of your consciousness, your heart, and your mind. And so until people find out what is the pattern in their mind and heart that keeps getting in their own way, they tend to keep recreating the same circumstances over and over and over again. And then AI just becomes a great tool that they do the same thing with.
What does self-sabotage look like in a high-performing or AI-enabled leaders?
Remember, I had a guy come to me who was an executive, And he knew that if he didn't stop procrastinating, he was going to get fired. He knew it, you know? And so I taught him a tool that we give called embracing the brat. Because the rebellious child, everybody has a brat inside of them. But people have been told from the time they're 4 or 5 years old, no, you can't be a brat. You've got to get with the program. You got to be a big boy or big girl. And we teach people how to take that part of them and actually embrace it and teach them how to like put a chair in front of them and express all that energy. So the brat feels heard and honored, and it literally can help people stop procrastinating. It can help people release negative thoughts or feelings. There's several different things it can help people do. And of course, he saved his job, stop procrastinating. And sabotage is just, there's like 100 versions of that. Everybody has their own unique version of self sabotage. And like I said, it's underneath that unique version is these great hidden gifts, strengths, and talents. Once they give the strength and talent the room to express itself, the so called dysfunction or hang up just literally disappears. Like in one of my programs, I had a third of the group lose 30 to 90 pounds, and it wasn't from diet and exercise. It was from acknowledging the gift that is within being overweight, which is unexpressed wantingness. Like some people want everything and they want it for everybody and they want it now. And they have this huge gift of wantingness, but the gap between their wantingness and their ability to express the wantingness, that is the weight, the overweight.
What shifts unlocks performance? So is there a particular shift that underlies, you kind of said it's the, I guess the internal, is there some shift that unlocks performance?
Well, there's a list of them that I have, but let me see if I can give you one good example. Basically, it comes down to, I do a workshop which is about accelerating the pace at which people grow. And I ask people, like, if you were to grow and learn continuously for the next 5 years, what would be the blessings you'd get in 5 years? And then I go to 10 years, in your money or your love life or whatever. I say, what if I could bring those blessings in 5 years to 2 or 10 years to 4? You'd want those blessings sooner than later. Yeah, of course. And it boils down to defensiveness. Because defensiveness is self-criticism. And the more you defend, you create and maintain the attack. You anchor in the reality that I'm bad and wrong. So we show people how to lower their defensive thermostat, which then accelerates the pace at which they grow. And it took me a long time to learn how not to be defensive, but I can't even tell you how grateful I am that I'm very, very, very rarely ever defensive anymore. Because I don't, whatever people are saying that might trigger somebody, when people throw garbage at you, the truth is you interpret 90% of that as insult, but it's only 10% of it that might be true. So we teach people how to own the 10% that might be true and say, the part of this that might be true is, and really look to see what, because if it wasn't, if you didn't believe any of it was true, you wouldn't be defensive. If I attack you for something that you know is not true, you're not defensive. It's only when you suspect that you might be true, that might be a little true, you know? So when people own the 10%, the defensiveness goes away. And so that would be one example of one of the key things that stops performance.
If someone is listening right now, building with AI, scaling a business, what's one mindset shift that they need immediately?
To do their best to love everything about themselves. I know that's not easy, but for me, it was a revelation one day. I got up from my couch and I heard this voice say, I love everything about you. And I didn't know if it was God or if it was my subconscious. And I looked immediately to see if it was true. And it was like, oh my goodness, it is, it's true. And then the next day when I had a meeting, I went to the meeting to see, well, if I love everything about me, can I love everything about them? And I looked at, I realized I could. I could say to anybody in my group, sincerely, I love everything about you, all your weaknesses and shortcomings, whatever you could. I love everything about you. So when people learn how to love everything about themselves, it's like a whole new world. And
Let's talk,
everything we do
mhm.
is teaching people how to do that.
Let's talk about tools for AI era leaders a little bit. So let's get practical. And you mentioned tools like Hang Up the Phone, Empowerment Dynamic, Dream Makers. How do these apply to leaders building in an AI-driven role that we're in today?
Actually, the truth is, I don't know the answer to that question. Like, I know what would happen to leaders on the positive or negative side as they use any tool, but I don't feel like I'm experienced enough with that specific topic to give you a straight answer.
Okay, appreciate that. I mean, I think one of the key things is that just the pace of change is so much faster because,
Yeah,
the
exactly.
way that things get implemented, like I used to, I've been in the technology and the kind of the human aspects of, kind of coaching in organizations for years. It used to take weeks, months to do projects, build websites, to deliver something new. And that's happening now in days, literally days. Right. So the pace of change is so much faster. I think that's a big aspect here that everybody's dealing with.
Oh
I
yeah.
know.
Oh yeah. I saw this like many years ago, like 40 years ago, that in this particular time, humanity is going through a huge birth and the acceleration. I mean, it was even predicted by the Mayans, you know, like we are right now. The reason why there's so much chaos on the planet right now is because this acceleration of time and energy and vibration is means that part of the reason why people are going through so much stuff is because they're getting ready to birth not only themselves but the planet. And I think it's going to be the biggest birth in human history.
It would seem so. It would seem
And
so.
we have a choice whether it's going to be a 3 hour birth or a 30 hour birth. And we don't want the 30 hour birth.
All right, let's talk about a bit the future of AI and human potential now. Let's zoom
Yeah.
out. AI is advancing rapidly, like we talked about. So there's all kinds of things, there's AI, agents, automation, autonomous workflows, and all these things. Where does human purpose fit into that future? Right. So, where does the humanness come into all of this?
Well, my highest purpose is to have a bigger piece of the pie of creating heaven on earth. And so my strategy is to ignite the potential of as many influencers and leaders and coaches and speakers and facilitators and parents and grandparents as I can. And in my awakening retreat, the retreat that I do, um, I spent a whole day teaching people about how the greatest key to manifest their vision is higher purpose. And I've had visions before, like decades ago, that one day, instead of kids having a Nintendo or an Xbox, they'd have these little computers, they'd put a little chip in, and a three-dimensional, Tony Robbins or Gary Acevedo or somebody would be taking the kids through these phenomenal processes. So there is certainly a, a bright future available. And of course, it's up to us. And I think that depending on people like you who can guide AI to be not just useful for humans, but independent of humans, then it will continue to serve us. The problem's going to come when people try to keep controlling AI. And I think that's going to be a huge mistake.
Does AI make purpose more important or less, do you think?
Neither. It doesn't make it more or less important. It facilitates the importance that people already have. If people have higher purpose and pure intent and the intent to empower other people, then AI is a wonderful tool for doing that. But again, it doesn't make a person more meaningful or more purposeful. It can just facilitate whatever level of purpose they are aiming for and intending to live.
Okay. And what's your vision for world-class facilitators and healers, I believe you call it, in an AI age? How do you see that?
Well, I recently had a revelation because we do a course called the Pinnacle of Presentations, which I taught to AT&T and different people. And I do it for the public here, but we didn't do it that year. And so I thought I'd teach that group just a page of how I create the miracle of our retreat, which we call the awakening. And so I taught him like a page of stuff. And I had this amazing revelation where I realized that nobody in my organization knows this stuff. And I realized that I need to really teach anybody who wants to be a world-class healer or facilitator. I need to teach all that stuff that I haven't yet taught people because it's so cutting edge. And so I'm putting that together right now. And I'm going to start looking for people who seriously want to be world-class facilitators or coaches or whatever. And so I'm excited to put that together because I realize that over the last 40 years, the retreat has gone through lots of mistakes and corrections and adjustments and polishing so it could be the miracle it is today. And when I realized all that, I realized, oh my goodness, that's why I had to have my first mentor when I was 19, because I had to have time to make all these mistakes and create the miracles I can create today so I can give that to people. I can teach that to people. So that's going to be called world-class facilitators and healers.
We're going to go through a lightning round now. So I'm going to just ask
Yeah.
you, I'll say a quick
Yeah.
sentence and just fill in the first thing that comes to your mind, the first
Okay.
word or since it comes to mind here.
Okay.
All right, Gary. So here we go. AI edition lightning round. First one, AI will amplify blank in organizations.
Efficiency.
Okay. The biggest mistake companies make with AI.
Overwhelm.
One thing AI will never replace.
Human intelligence.
Would you
I
differentiate human
should say
intelligence
I should
away
say that
from
differently. I should say differently. I would say um, the intelligence of the soul.
hmm, sales in an AI era is blank?
Proficient.
One habit that every AI-driven leader needs.
Mastery of the moment of choice.
And one thing to stop doing immediately.
Criticizing.
All right, great. So, Gary, it's been a powerful conversation. And I think we went a little bit longer. I didn't even really notice the times. It was very interesting. Um, Especially at a time when everyone is focused on tools, but not enough on people. So, for those who want to connect and learn more or work with you, where can they find you? And we'll include those afterward in the show notes as well. So, website,
Thank
phone,
you.
socials, programs
Yeah,
you'd like
the
to share.
website is www.riselg.com, which stands for riseleadershipgroup.com.
Any other
And
socials you want to share?
they can also email me to gary@riselg.com.
Great. Okay. And afterward, you can send to me the those. I can make sure we get the correct everything spelled, everything correctly, and we'll include those as well. So
Right.
if you take one thing from this episode, it's this: AI is not the advantage. The advantage is how humans show up using AI, because the future isn't just AI powered; it's human amplified by AI. Until next time, this is AIScento.